Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome as we begin our playthrough of Lords of Heaven, designed by Alexander Jagosinski and published by Phalanx Games. In this game you take control of 1 to 4 factions as you vie for control of Jerusalem and surrounding locations in the first 2 historical Crusades. In this game we're going to explore the 2-player game between the Christian Crusaders and the Shia Fatimid Caliphate. We'll talk about how the game works and we'll make some initial moves, and then in the next episode we'll accelerate the gameplay until the end of these 2 Crusades. Also, if you signed up for the giveaway to Lords of Heaven, we're going to be picking the winner of that giveaway contest at the end of this video, so stick around to see if you won a copy. That connects, of course, to the fact that the game is going to crowdfunding, almost as I'm making this right now. So August 27th, 2024, links are down below in the description. If you're interested in getting this game on crowdfunding, that's the direction to head. And with all that, let's jump in now and get started on our playthrough. So let's do an overview of the game before we start to jump in and play. And what we're looking at right now is the game world. We can see a map of the Middle East and we can see 7 location cards here. And these are set up for the 2-player game. You flip them over for the 3-player game. We're going to take a closer look at these in a little bit. However, this is the heart of the game. All sides and all factions in this game over the course of 2 Crusades are vying for control of these locations. Jerusalem is down here. We'll take a closer look at all of these pretty soon. But basically you're trying to develop these areas, add influence, move troops, generate income. You're also trying to win battles and sieges, and you're trying to get as many victory points as possible by taking over these areas and gaining control of them, while denying that opportunity to your opponents. Now we'll come back and take a closer look at how all this works, but this is our game world and this is what it looks like at the beginning of the First Crusade. The game is divided up into 2 Crusades, each of which lasts anywhere from 6 to 8 turns. And at the end of the First Crusade, you can see we have 2 blank areas, Aleppo and Damascus. We're going to add these 2 locations at the end of the First Crusade. They will be in effect for the Second Crusade. Now I've zoomed down here to the bottom of the game board and we can see here basically blank empty card locations. This is a card driven game, and each turn each side is going to play a card and take one of 5 actions. And the main 4 actions you can take are listed here by these icons. This is a development action, and when we take a development action, this basically means building buildings and upgrading our buildings in the area to make our fortresses and our citadels, or perhaps building a church or a mosque to increase our influence in the area. Lastly, down here, this is a presence action, which is a way we're going to add support, military support to some regions, or increase our political influence in certain locations. On the right-hand side here, we can see this is the movement area. So we're going to play a card to basically move some of our support, move some of our military troops around. And this is the action we can use to launch battles and sieges, which are a big part of the game. Lastly, over here, we can see the money bag. This is an action we can play that says we need money. We're going to use our influence in our buildings and in the area here, and we're going to generate income because everything in this game costs gold. Lastly, if I slide over here to the right, we can see a blank spot. You can always take a discard action with one of your cards, and when you take a discard action, you have a generate kind of a random income revenue stream that comes for that. So one of 5 possible actions, 4 major ones, as well as a discard. Down below here, we can see our deck of cards. We'll talk about those as we go forward. And lastly, over here on the left, we have our turn cards. We're going to flip over these cards until we get to the end of the First Crusade, then set them all up again and play the Second Crusade. That's the second thing we need to look at. The third thing we want to take a look at is our player boards and our player area. So we're playing a 2-player game. We've got yellow, which is the Shia Fatimid Caliphate, and we'll take a look at the Crusaders, the Christian Crusaders map in a moment. This is the player board at the start of the game. We can see we have 3 rows here. This first row contains 3 mosques because this is a Muslim faction. We can also see 3 fortresses here and then 3 citadels. Now, none of these have been built yet, so one of the things we're going to be trying to do is to build these over the course of the 2 Crusades. Lastly, we can also upgrade things. Everything starts out at level 1. We can upgrade our mosques to level 2 and level 3. Likewise, our fortresses and our citadels can be upgraded as well to give us additional bonuses. Now, at the start of the 2-player game, some of the factions control areas on the map already. So the Caliphate here actually already controls 3 of the city locations at the beginning of this 2-player game, giving them a rather strong starting position. It's going to be up to the Crusaders to knock some of this off and shake up the Caliphate in order to win the Crusades battle here. Next up, we'll take a look at the starting resources for the Caliphate. Now, we'll talk more about these in detail, but there are 3 types of military units. And at the start of the game here, the Shiite Fatimid Caliphate has 1 siege tower, 3 regular troops, and 1 knight contingent. These here are the presence markers, and we'll talk about these in a moment. Hang on to that right now. They have 2 left. Each side has 10 of these, and they're precious because you only have 10, and 8 of them at the beginning of the 2-player game are already deployed to the map for the Caliphate. Lastly, we mentioned that everything costs gold. The Caliphate starts with 6 gold, a 5 and a 1. Faith also plays a factor in the area, in the contest as well, and they start with 1 faith marker. Now, normally when you're playing a game, you fold these player screens up, and your opponent will be able to see your military troops and your presence markers, but they won't be able to see the gold and the faith markers. Those are hidden from view. Because we're doing this solitaire and I'm kind of showing a demonstration of gameplay, I've folded them up so we can see the information on the player screens as well. Here is our Christian Crusaders starting mat. We can see they have churches instead of mosques, but basically the same identical layout. We have 3 churches, 3 fortresses, and 3 citadels yet to be played, and upgrade paths. And the Crusaders, we can see they only control 1 location at the start of this 2-player game. By comparison, here are the starting resources for the Christian Crusaders. We can see they have 3 of their presence markers have yet to be played instead of 2 for the Caliphate. They have the same starting troop deployments. That's not always the case. Different factions can have different starting troop deployments, a knight, 3 regular troops, and a siege tower. They start with fewer gold, 4 instead of 6, but they have 3 faith markers instead of 1 for the Caliphate. Let's jump in now and do a quick explanation of how the location works, because that's central to how gameplay works. We can see we're looking at the southern half of the map right now, which has 3 locations: Tyrus, Jerusalem, and Ascalon. You'll also note that there's some dotted lines with this little fortress marker that's empty at the moment, connecting these locations. That means that fortresses are played between connecting locations. So if you're going to build a fortress, it's going to sit between Tyrus and Ascalon and influence both of these regions. Now, a lot of the areas, as we'll see in the map, have locations and connections between the 2 areas that you can play. At the moment, we can really only see the connections here between Tyrus and Ascalon. Let's jump in now to take a closer look at the starting location of Jerusalem and walk through what all the information on this location card is. So what we're looking at right now is Jerusalem. It's one of the 7 locations at the start of the game, and these locations and how they work are central to gameplay, so I want to take a couple minutes now and explain how they work. Basically, when we look at Jerusalem, we can see it's roughly divided up into 2 halves. There's the half that's under this little siege engine and the half that's under this little crossed swords there. This designates the area around the city of Jerusalem, and this designate what's going on in the city itself. We can also see that both the Crusaders, who are red, and the Caliphate, who are yellow, have something going on. We don't quite know what these are yet, but we'll learn about them momentarily. Now, on the right-hand side, we can play lots of things here. But on the right-hand side, this is where we can build either a church or a mosque. And we can see that there's only space for one of them, meaning either only one faction can have a mosque or a church, in this signifying their kind of religious presence in the region. This blank space here in the left, we'll notice that these 2 yellow markers are here. Now, these markers here, if we flip this over, we can see that the other side has a crown on it. These are presence markers, and they can be played either in one of 2 ways, either with the crown side up or with the flag side up. They designate very different things. We'll notice here that the yellow, which is Caliphate, have 2 of these flag markers in this area on the right-hand side. The flag markers dictate military support, general military influence and support in the area, and they're always played on the right side of the location card. So the Caliphate has military forces in the area. There hasn't been a church or mosque built in the area. And then we can look over here to see the Crusaders have no military support in this area yet. Let's go over here now and influence. And these military support dictate how many troops you can bring to a battle or siege. So it's very important, if you're going to be fighting in an area, to generate your military support and basically bring these rough equivalent of troops into the area. Now let's talk about the left-hand side of the mat here, which represents the city itself. We can see this blank spot here, and this is where a side can build a citadel. A citadel helps defend the city in sieges. You can only build a citadel if you've got control of the city, which means that you have influence, which is these other two markers in the right side column. So we can see at the start of the First Crusade, Shia Fatimid Caliphate, which has the crown here signifying political influence, has control over the city of Jerusalem. That's good for them, bad for the Crusaders. There is some political influence in Jerusalem by the Christian Crusaders at the start, but they're in the left position, so that means the Caliphate, which has the rightmost position, controls the city. One of the things the Christian Crusaders would like to do is to get their control marker one more to the right and replace the Fatimid Caliphate so they would gain control over Jerusalem. We'll talk about how all this works in more detail as we play the game, but for now it's good enough to know that you can only have one of these markers in any given city. Who's ever on the right-hand side, the rightmost side, controls the city, and if we actually lift this up, we can see the laurel wreaths signifying you control it. You have to pay costs to move up there, but if you control the city and have a citadel here, the only way to wrest control of the city is to siege the city to gain control of it from the other side. So as we think about one of the things that the Shia Fatimid Caliphate might do at the beginning of the First Crusade, if they could build a citadel here, that would be a huge thing, because that would mean the Crusaders have to get here, and instead of just shifting political influence, they're going to have to win a siege to get the city. Now we can see a number up here, 10 gold. When you win a siege and you shift control of a city, you have the option to raise the city, which means you remove all influence and you get that many gold. Likewise, we talked about generating income in a turn. When you pick a generate income action, you get the gold that's listed under here if you have an influence in that position. So Jerusalem, not only is it a nice city to control for victory point purposes, but it will generate 3 gold coins for the Caliphate because they control it. So this is a nice city to have, not only for that, for generating income, because all of the cities aren't equal in the game. And we'll talk more about how this works as we start to take various actions, but that's a general overview of the locations in the map. So as we're starting out to think about gameplay, let's take a look at the current game state in the world. We're looking now again at the southern portion of the map, and we've talked about Jerusalem, how the Caliphate has a strong position here, military presence and political presence, and could very well build a citadel in here to give them a very strong base in Jerusalem, the biggest city in the game. We'll notice to the north, there's no Christian Crusader presence at all. We have some Caliphate in the highest position here, so they have gained control of Tyrus as well. Likewise, no Christian Crusader influence or military presence to the west in Ascalon. The Caliphate does have some political influence. They could increase that and try to gain control of the city that way. So one of the thoughts we might have as the Caliphate is really consolidating our control and our strength in the southern part of the Middle East. Let's take a look at the north now. We have 4 cities, Edessa, Antiochia, Tripoli, and Iconium. To the north is where we see the Christian Crusaders. We have Iconium here, a strong military force in the kind of the northwest here, as well as they have control over Iconium. It's the only city they control at the start of the crusade here. In Tripoli, no presence by either side. It's a wide open city. Antiochia, both the Crusaders and the Caliphate have some small military presence there, no political presence in Antiochia. To the northeast, the third city that the Caliphate controls, they have a military presence, they have political presence and control over the cities. The Crusaders do have some political influence in the city. So again, the Caliphate's sitting in a rather strong position with control over 3 cities, whereas the Crusaders only have control over 1. So as we think about from the Crusaders' position, they would like to be able to sweep down through the central part of the Middle East and really build up some support, as well as perhaps thinking about taking on some of the strength in Jerusalem if they could do so before the Caliphate gets a really strong position in the south. Lots of options and lots of ways we can go with this. It's time to jump in and start playing. In a moment we'll start the game, but a couple of disclaimers before we start the game. 1, this is a prototype. Some of the rules might change, some of the components might change between now and the time it goes through crowdfunding and finally gets published, so I want to keep that in mind. Second point to make is that I think I have a fairly good understanding of the rules, but it might not be perfect. There's a couple of places I'm a little bit cloudy on some of the nuances of the rules, and the rules may change as well. So if you're looking at this as a tutorial or a way to learn how to play the game specifically, I might keep that to the side and look at this more as a video that's going to show how gameplay works, the spirit of gameplay, to see if this is something that you would like to get. Also, from a strategy and tactics standpoint, I've played the 4-player game twice now. This is my 3rd game, the first time I'm playing the 2-player game. The play balance may be tweaked as things go forward, and I by no means am claiming any kind of strategic or tactical excellence at the game. So mistakes from that standpoint will probably be made, and we will try to learn from them as we go. With that being said, it is time to start our game with the drafting of cards. So to start every game, you have a drafting of cards. Every player gets dealt 5 cards. They pick one of them and they pass the other 4 around to their opponents. And you do that 3 times. So you're going to draft 3 cards as you kind of pass them around here. Now, the Christian Crusaders have been dealt 5 cards as well, so we'll go through and pick them. These are the ones I've dealt for the Caliphate here. There's a few things to take a look at. We'll talk more in detail on these as we play through the rounds, but the top left is the religious significance. This is good for any faction. These are for Muslim. These are split. We have the Byzantine purple and the Christian Crusader red, so that means either faction can use these. And by use, we mean anyone can play a card, but when you play a card for a development or a presence action, you also trigger the event if the card qualifies you as a faction. So this one here, as the Caliphate, we wouldn't trigger the event playing the card that way because it's not our religious faction. So that's important. Every card has an event that triggers, again, under certain circumstances. This brings in income if you're playing it for movement or income. This is the red coins, or the cost you have to pay, and we'll show how that works as we go forward when you're playing it for development or presence. And then down in the bottom left corner is the military impact. This is the value added to combat when you're using these cards as part of a battle or a siege. So I'm going to sort through these now. Actually, you know which one we're going to take. We're going to take the Pilgrims card here because this is a pretty good card, I think, for anybody really. If you have a presence in adjacent cities, and the Caliphate have 3 that are adjacent right now, so they would pick up a very big 5 faith if they played this card and can trigger it for its effect. So we're going to keep this one for the Caliphate. I'm going to do the draft. We're going to get to 3 cards each. We're going to add in the dummy card, so everybody will start with 4 cards as the game starts. And with that, we can start the game. We're flipping over to round 1, and the game is underway with the first round in this crusade. One last point before we start. I'm not 100% certain I've got the 2 players set up correctly. I've got a little point of ambiguity in the rules that I'm working to get clarified, but I want to make sure I get this video out before the crowdfunding starts. So I'll clear it up in the next video. It might impact play balance a little bit, but it's not going to impact at all how the game is played. With that in mind, it's time for the Caliphate to go first. I believe they are the first player ahead of the Crusaders, and they have a golden opportunity by going first here to kind of take Jerusalem under control by building a citadel. So we are going to take a development action. So the development action is a very straightforward action. We are going to put it down here in the development row, and we are going to pay this bottom cost, which is 2 gold. So I've taken 2 gold from the Caliphate here, and I've put it into the general supply, leaving them with 4 instead of 6 gold. So we've paid that cost there. And we'll talk about how the costs compound as the turn goes through. Now, what we can do then is we can build any one structure. We are going to build a citadel, and we can do that in Jerusalem because we have control of the city. Up in Jerusalem, we drop a citadel in there that's under Caliphate control, meaning now that the Crusaders can't just flip the presence here to take control of it. They're going to have to siege Jerusalem if they want control. Next up, we can also upgrade one of our structures. Let's go do that. So we've cleared off the citadel from our board here. We can increase any one of these 3, but I do want to increase the citadel. That will increase the defensive strength of that citadel if the Crusaders decide to try to siege Jerusalem. Lastly, we can also trigger the event if it matches our religious faction. And we can see that the card here is good for any faction, so we get the effect here. Pilgrims, if you have presence in adjacent cities, gain, depending on how many cities you have. We have 3 cities, so we gain 5 faith markers. The Caliphate increases faith from 1 to 6. That's a massive amount of faith to pick up with that event there. So I think a very strong turn for the Caliphate in turn 1. For the Christian Crusaders, where our strength is up here in the northwest, I'd like to see us, I don't think we're going to have success down in Jerusalem quickly. So I think a good move might be to try to build up our forces up here in the north and then try to gain control of the north and sweep south. So with that in mind, we're going to try to increase our presence and see if we can gain some presence here in Antiochia and or Tripoli. Let's go play a presence action. The presence action works much like the development action in that we're going to come down here and pay this cost on the bottom, which is 1 coin. the Christian Crusaders started with 4, so off camera I'm moving 1 gold coin and leaving them with 3. Now, you can either perform the presence action or do the effect in any order, but you have to complete the action before you do the second part of it. We're actually going to do the taxes here. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether this means gain 1 gold from cities with your presence in it, or means gain the gold you're supposed to get in your cities with presence, but I think because there's no number in front of the gold coin there, that it means that you get the gold you're supposed to get from the cities, which means it's kind of like you generate income with this as well. So I'm going to play it that way, but again, it could be gain 1 gold. I'm not 100% sure on that card, but let's go see how that works. So the Christian Crusaders have influence in 3 cities. One of them is Jerusalem. And down the bottom here, we can see 2 gold coins. So for this presence, the Crusaders are going to get 2 gold coins. Let's take a look at Edessa. Edessa, the Crusaders have 1 bonus gold coin, so that gives them 3. Lastly, Iconium. Iconium, where the Crusaders are in the right column, they get 2 more, giving the Crusaders 5 gold coins for those taxes. All in all, the Crusaders now have 8 gold coins that we can spend on presents or save for another turn. And we are going to spend, indeed. I'm going to spend the 4 cost here to put presence in the lowest level here of Antiochia, giving us presence in this area. Now, we can only put presence in areas that we have presence adjacent to it, influence adjacent to it. So we can't go down to Tripoli yet because we don't have anything adjacent to that. Now, we could pay more to shift presence. We've still got 4 gold coins left, but actually going to hang on to those. We have a play I think we can do next turn as the Crusaders to shift things a little bit more. So for the moment, that's it for the Crusaders. They are going to stop their turn, leaving them with 4 gold coins, but they've built up presence in Antiochia. That ends our first turn, and now we head into round 2. Caliphates are going to generate some income. They have 4 gold right now, but I think we can get a lot of gold, and that should give us a good bit of power as the Caliphate. So they're going to play this card for income. Now, when you play cards for income or movement, you don't trigger the effect. And this is actually good for them too, because this is a faction card. This is for the Christian faction, so they can't use it as an event anyway. So we might as well play it up here for income. The first thing when you play something for income is you get the value that's sitting visible in the row. So they get 1 faith marker for that. The second thing they get as part of income is they get 2 in any combination of money, faith, or units. The value of units. So for the Caliphate here, we're actually going to take 2 ground units that are worth 1 strength point each for a total value of 2. So we'll take 2 regular troops, we'll add them to the 3 they have in reserve. That gives them 5 ground troops in reserve. Then lastly, they gain income, just as we did with the Christian Crusaders. They gain income based on the value and the presence, the influence they have in the cities. Let's take a look at those. Jerusalem gives them 3. Ascalon gives them 2, which is a total of 5. Tyrus gives them 7. Edessa adds 2 more, giving them a grand total of 9. They added to the 4 they already had. They now have 13 gold. They added 13 gold, 2 troops, and a faith with this powerful income action. Crusaders are going to play a development action. Now, how it works when we play subsequent cards in a round is that you now have to pay the total cost here of both of these. So rather than costing 2, it's going to cost 4 to play the development action for the Crusaders here. So they are going to pay 4, which is the entirety of all the gold they have. I'm not sure this is a good move to leave them without any gold funds, but I think it's actually going to be a strong move, in part because of this comet sign event, which says increase your influence by 1 in up to 2 different cities. Pay and move any of your military support as well, because it costs 1 gold to move your military support. Crusaders won't be able to do that because they don't have any money. But we can increase our influence by 1 in up to 2 different cities. So let's go do that. In Antiochia, the Crusaders can increase their influence by 1, bumping out the control there and taking control of this city. That gives them their second city. So that's the first time where they increase their influence by 1. Now comes the dastardly part. In Edessa, they can increase their influence by 1. You can't have 2 at the same level, so it bumps the other one down, which means they wrest control, political control of the city of Edessa from the Caliphate, taking control of that marker from the Caliphate, giving the Crusaders 3 cities under their control, and the Caliphate only 2. Now they also had a development action, so I think what we can do now is up here to lock down this city a little bit more. We are going to actually, I don't know if I want to build a citadel here. Yeah, we're actually going to do it because I don't want them to come up here and grab this city. So we're going to make it hard. They have military troops here. We're going to build a citadel in Edessa. And this means that if the Caliphate wants to retake political control, they're going to have to defeat us in battle. Lastly, like the Caliphate did, we're going to upgrade our citadels to level 2 to help with the defense of that city. That ends round 2. We are on to round 3 of the first Crusade. This might not be the optimal action for the Caliphate, but I want to show some combat in this example. So let's do this. We're going to play a movement action for the Caliphate. They gain this benefit, which is 1 gold off camera. I've added a gold to their reserve. The effect doesn't apply when you're playing movement. So now we can move our troops, and they can pay 1 gold to move to an adjacent location. So now we can move the military support for the Caliphate. Let's see if we can knock down Antiochia here. So we're going to move this military support. Sorry, it's not influence, it's military support. And we're going to move them here from, there we go, Edessa down to Antiochia. And that costs 1 gold. So it costs 1 gold to move to an adjacent location. But you can move as many as you want, as far as you want, as long as you can pay for it. So what we're going to also do is, we're kind of rolling in cash here as the Caliphate. So we're going to move this military unit to the adjacent Tiris for 1, then pay a second one, moving them up to the north to Tripoli. From Tripoli, we're going to spend 1 more and move them a little bit farther north here, shifting our influence up into the north, spending 3 gold to do so, but they're kind of laden with cash, so that's okay. Off camera, I've removed that. And now, after this movement we've done, it's time for war. So battle has been declared here in Antiochia. It is not a siege because there's no citadel in place here. It's just a straight up battle. And winning a battle gets you 3 victory points, so it's time here the Caliphate trying to turn some of this cash into victory points and influence in the area. Now, there's no allies because we're playing a 2-player game. There's a whole system to get allies and things like this, but there isn't. So we're hopping down now to the next step that is applicable for this, which is the defender may move 1 military support from an adjacent location into an area, but it costs 1 gold. And if you recall, the Crusaders blew all their cash in the last round, so they don't have the funds to pay the troops and supplies to get them to Antiochia. This military unit here is all on its own. So without the Crusaders' ability to move units into Antiochia, the battle is set. We've got Antiochia holding a big influence politically in the city itself, but the battle outside in the plains of Antiochia, the Caliphate has 3 military support units here, up to only 1 of the Crusaders. Caliphate hoping to pick up a victory here and increase their direct victory points in the campaign by dominating this battle. Now, this is a place where it's going to take a little bit of explanation because we're down to the stage now where we've kind of calculated the allies and there are none in the 2-player game. We've assembled all the troops. This is the stage of the battle where both players kind of in secret determine how much resources they're actually going to commit to the battle. And there's 3 places you do that. You have the ability to play a card, a battle card, and that battle card has certain effects on it. And those effects will either give you a stronger chance to win the battle or a lesser chance to win the battle. Let's take a look what it might look like for the Caliphate. By the way, at the end of each turn, you draw back up to your hand limit of 4 cards. So the Caliphate played 1 card to do the movement action at the beginning. They have these 2 cards, and down the bottom here, we can see the battle effects. This adds 1 sword, which is kind of the tally you're trying to increase. The side in battle that has the most swords in the battle wins. And that's going to be changed by these cards. It's going to be changed by units and unit quality. It's going to be changed by die rolls, fortresses, citadels, all kinds of things in the area. So we'll work through these in stage. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually pretty simple once you've done it. But you'll notice here it's got this, if you win, place a church or a mosque. So this would be a nice thing for the Caliphate to be able to play in battle, and then they could win the battle, they could add a mosque to the region, which would be pretty helpful too. You'll also note over here, this is the bluffing card. If you don't want to commit a good card or don't want to commit forces to the battle, you can play this bluff, which means that, yeah, we're just going to kind of give this one up to you here. So this gives you one place where you can kind of secretly determine how much you're going to play. The second is when you're picking your units. And let's go back and take a look at the location for that. For each military support token in the region, you can play 2 units. And for battles, we can't play siege towers, but we can play either knights or ground troops if we have them. And knights have a military value here of 3, ground troops have a military value of 1. So that's one place. And you can play, again, 2 military units for each ground military support in the area, but you don't have to. So you could kind of bring them in, and for every unit you play, you have to commit to battle. You have to pay 1 gold if they survive to keep them back in your reserve of troops. So it costs money to put troops into battle and to get them back, assuming, of course, they still survive the battle. So you've got the calculation where you don't want to overcommit, because everything you overcommit is going to cost you gold to get back into your army and back up to combat strength. So that's another place where you're thinking about how much you're committing. Lastly, you can commit faith to a battle. And faith adds 1 combat value to the battle as well. And these are extinguished in the combat. So they're 1 use and then they're gone. Now the Caliphate now have 7 faith. A lot of military units and a pretty good card. The question is, how much would they probably want to commit to this battle? Given the Crusaders' relatively weak position here, the Crusaders don't have any fortresses adjacent to this location, which would add to their strength. And so there's nothing really to worry about from that regard. But I still think the Caliphate wants to win this. So I'm going to commit a medium amount of troops and faith to this in the hopes of creating a dominant victory. Now, for the Crusaders here, the choice is, they're looking pretty bleak. They have 3 faith and they have some cards and things like that. They could try to win, but I don't think it makes too much sense to try to win here because of the way, just the overwhelming force that the Caliphate has. So as the Crusaders, we're going to kind of make a die roll decision where we're going to say, well, maybe they would maximally commit everything and just hope they could win on a 1 to 3 die roll. And perhaps they would play a more conservative approach and not commit very much on a 4, 5, or 6 die roll. So I'm going to roll that and we'll see what their decision was. So let's see, a 1, 2, or 3, they commit heavy. A 4, 5, or 6, they commit almost nothing. Get a 4, 5, or 6. So the Crusaders are going to hold back on their committal. They're not going to try to really invest a lot in this. They're conceding this battle. Let's see how it will turn out, though. I'm going to put the Caliphate down the bottom here. They are going to play the card that gives them 1 combat strength, but if they win, they get to play a church. Having said that the Crusaders aren't going to commit too many forces, it's still to their advantage here. This has the effect of causing 1 casualty, so they can chip away at the military forces here of the Caliphate. This blood mark means that 1 unit is lost in battle. So that will at least cause some casualties on the Caliphate by playing this card, and it's 2 strength points, so that's something to be said for. The next thing to decide here is the faith. Now this again would be done in secret with these cards. We're of course showing everything. We're going to have the Caliphate kind of really swing here a medium amount. They could commit up to 7, but we're going to have them commit 3 faith markers to increase their combat strength by 3, giving them 4 right now. We're going to have the Crusaders hold on it. They're kind of conceding this battle, so they're not committing it. Again, this would be done in secret if it were just head-to-head kind of thing. Now for units, the Caliphate have 3 units in the military support units there. They can play up to 6 military units. We're going to play 5. We're going to play all of our ground troops here. Actually, I have even a smarter idea then, right? Because we can play our knight, which is worth 3. That's pretty strong. So we're going to play 4. We'll play 5 like this. So this is leaving, yeah, we'll leave 2 in reserve. We'll play 4 for 7 more. Now the Crusaders are going to play the 2 that they have. They don't want to lose the knight, so they're going to commit 2 ground troops here. And again, I'm just kind of thinking through what each side would do, probably do in a situation like this. And again, all of this would be hidden until it gets committed at the same time. So when you're playing for kind of against another human opponent, you don't know what each side is doing. We're just kind of making logical decisions for them. Now we roll dice. And we have these unique dice here that have either combat swords that add combat value to it, or blood marks, which means you increase casualties on the enemy. Be nice if we could knock out, as the Caliphate, knock out the presence, the military presence in this area too. So we're hoping for some good blood markers here. So we get to roll 1 die for each military support token presence in the area. So the Caliphate are going to roll 3. So let's see what a result they get here for this. They get 2 swords and 2 blood. That's actually fairly good. Now, if you had a mosque in the area, if you had a mosque on the board, you can re-roll 1 die for each time, each player, each area you've got a mosque in, but no sides have mosques in play yet. So that's what the result will be for the Caliphate here. Now we're going to roll the die for the Crusaders. They get 1 sword and 1 blood. So again, drawing some blood here now. Now, normally what would happen again, all of these things, the cards and the faith and the troops get kind of flipped over at one point in time, and you calculate who won. So this would be done in secret. Playing solitaire, again, just kind of making these logical decisions for them. But now we've played the cards, we've played the faith, we've played the units, we've rolled our dice, and we have calculated the impact of nearby fortresses, which is none, because there's no fortresses in play. Now we tally up to see who won the battle. So we're going to look at the tally for the Caliphate here, which is 1 sword for your card, 3 swords for your faith, giving them 4. For units, 5, 6, 7, 10. Then we add dice is a 12, no fortress benefit. So 12 for the Caliphate. The Crusaders, who didn't really commit heavily to this battle, have ended up with 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a resounding military victory for the Caliphate. So immediately we're going to adjust the victory points for this battle, because the Caliphate has beaten the Crusaders in Antiochia for the first battle of Antiochia. Up in the north, Caliphate gets 3 points for the win. You do get 1 point for participating in the battle, so it's kind of your consolation prize for the Crusaders. They get 1 point. The Caliphate takes the lead in victory points. So we've calculated the victor. The next thing to do is to calculate the military losses. Now, here we have 1 blood as a special effect by the Crusaders, and another one here. So that equates to 2 units that have to be lost by the Caliphate. So we're going to take out, the Caliphate will opt to not lose their knights. They're going to lose those ground troops. So they go back to the general supply. They are lost in battle. Likewise, the Caliphate caused 2 casualties here as well, and that's it. So that means that these 2 troops are lost. The ground troops that the Crusaders push forward are lost in combat as well, leaving them only with 1 ground troop in their support, in their general supply here. So they need to get some ground troops going here too if they're going to be effective in battle. The faith markers are extinguished. They're just lost. So those are gone and burned up in the battle. These units now can be taken back into your force, but you have to pay a gold for each one. The Caliphate will do that, so we're going to pay 2 gold to keep these 2 units. But they were weakened as well from this battle. Lastly, the special effect here, if you win, place a mosque. That is a great victory point for the Caliphate here. Let's do that. So the great victory of Antiochia here adds a mosque to the city. For each mosque you have in play, of the 3 that you could possibly have, you can re-roll 1 of your combat dice. So that's an effect there. And then there are also bonuses to having mosques at the income stage of the game as well. So nice to get these in play. That's the first mosque in play in the game. First battle of Antiochia. Now, one thing to notice here too, this military support stays here. The combat losses are taken first in units and then in military support. So if the Caliphate had gotten 1 more blood marker, they would have eliminated this military unit in the area and knocked it out. But they didn't, so it stays there. So militarily, the situation is still, you could say, largely undecided, but perhaps the Caliphate would want to recreate this battle again, defeating the Crusaders again and gaining more victory points. So now we got to kind of figure out a way as the Crusaders to resolve the situation. Either concede Antiochia, maybe we're building a citadel, building a fortress nearby. This is where it's starting to get interesting. The Crusaders need gold. So as their action, we are going to pay, we're going to play for income here. And you'll notice that it covers up this faith unit here because it's far down. So the total income value of this move in terms of the benefit is the 1 gold coin, but that gives them 1 gold coin because they have no gold. They can't do anything without this gold. They're kind of stuck here. But They get 1 gold. Let's calculate the rest. Anytime you take an income action, you can get a value of 2 in units, gold, or faith. These are 1 value troops, so they're going to take 2 of those because they are desperately short of ground troops. Then the last thing we do with the income action is to calculate the income based on the city. We did that before. We show the influence marker and what column it's in. That determines how much gold you're going to get. The Crusaders actually get 8 gold for their value in 4 different cities. So the value of the income action is that 1 plus the 8 here plus the 2 troops. So 9 income and 2 troops. A nice bonus that gets the income level back up for the Crusaders to where they kind of need it in order to be able to start taking some actions, and they get a little bit more military presence, military troop capacity in the area as well. And with that, we're at the end of round 3 in the first Crusade, with the Caliphate up 3 victory points to 1. We've seen all the major actions though: development, presence, income, and movement. We haven't seen how to discard a card, and we haven't seen sieges, but battles and sieges are very similar. And we'll be back in the next episode to play out the rest of this 2 Crusade game. But we're not done yet because we still have to give away a copy of the game. Let's do that now. And now it's our happy time. We're going to pick the winner of a copy, the giveaway copy of Lords of Heaven with the crowdfunding stretch goals and things. So, but let's be really clear on what's happening. First, in order to be in this list, you had to answer 3 questions correctly about the game. Surprisingly, one of the questions was which one of these is a city in the game, and one of the choices was New York. More than a dozen people picked New York and said it was in the game. It is not in the game. It's in the Middle East. It's a game's in the Middle East. It's a first. So I'm not sure what was happening there. Maybe people thought it said is not in the game, and they just assumed that and picked New York because it wasn't like the others. But yeah, that didn't make you. Some people didn't make it to the final round for that. But anyway, we're gonna pick a random name from the list of people who answered all 3 questions correctly. But to be clear, don't go sit by the mailbox and wait for it right away, right? Because 2 things have to happen. One is the game has to meet its crowdfunding goals. If it doesn't meet its crowdfunding goals, then it doesn't become reality, and nobody gets a game. No one gets a game. So if you win nothing if that happens. So you're hoping that the game meets its crowdfunding goals if you're the winner here. The second thing is it's got to be produced and shipped and then shipped out to people who ordered the game. So we have to wait for that process to happen. You'll get the game shipped after the crowdfunding is complete, after the game is produced, and when the final version of the game starts shipping. So there's going to be a wait for your game too. So just so we're clear on both of those things. And now let's go pick the winner of Lords of Heaven. Congratulations. We had a lot of people with successful right answers here. I'm going to push the start button. Good luck to everybody. We get Martin Claveau is our winner of the Lords of Heaven game. You entered your email into that list. I will reach out to you by email to get your mailing address, and then I will send it off to Phalanx so they know you won. And then it's a matter now of hoping it makes it through crowdfunding and then waiting until it gets produced. Thank you, everybody, for playing. We're not done yet, though, with our coverage of Lords of Heaven. I'm going to play one more. We're going to create one more video where we finish the Crusade game that we've got going now between the Crusaders and the Caliphate to see who can win control of the Middle East. I'll put a link to the next video up here as soon as it's ready. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I welcome your questions and thoughts about the game too. Bye.